Hello, hello. What's up, world? What's up, Zion? It's Prince Easy coming at you again. I'm staring at the moon right now. It's weird, but anyway. So I promised to make a video about this particular lecture here, right? And give my views about what was discussed, right? So you can watch for yourself what was discussed, right? I have watched the whole thing. It was about an hour and some few minutes. So I do have a couple of I don't know, views. Let's see. So there were three categories that he talked about, and in which I agree with them, right? Because of my searching around and looking around at the history of the world and across different civilizations. It's true what he said about goddesses, monotheistic and pantheonic view when it comes, or rather when it comes to the discussion of the origins of evil, right? Because this is what we are trying to figure out, right? I'm trying to figure that out, right? So I would like to begin with the fallen angels, right? The fallen angels. I think this is where I would like to begin, right? The fallen angels. So in my understanding, this is a conspiracy, right? This is a conspiracy by the Nephilim, okay? And you might ask then, what do I mean, right? Well, here's my view, right? All of these three movements, I don't know what to call them, for lack of better words, we can call them movements, right? All of these three movements here were initiated by them, right? They were initiated by them, the fallen, I mean. And of course, most important also must be emphasized is that all of these three elements are currently active and working in tandem with each other in society today, right? Because when you talk about worship of the goddess, we talk about fertility, right? We talk about sex cults mostly, right? That was their, or rather that was the pinnacle of their ritualistic movement, right? We can see it all over the world. And then we have the monotheistic view, right? And then we have the pantheonic view, right? The goddess, it is out, I consider it the age of illusions, right? The age of illusions. What do I mean? Well, it created a certain tendency, or rather outlook, towards sexual activity, right? For lack of better words. Again, right? It fetishized, or I don't know, fantasized the whole ordeal. And as usual, They took it too far, and that was their downfall, right? They took it too far. Okay? And of course, with the monotheistic movement, right? Even before we get to that, right? The whole, literally, sex and drugs define our culture today. That's what it is, right? Sex and drugs define our culture today. It is the same defining feature of these goddess worship societies. It's the same thing, right? Literally, right? Mushrooms and all sorts of potions and stuff, right? And with the monotheistic movement, they basically wanted to, like you said, create empires, right? To unite the people. So they created, just like what I talked about here, right? What the Egyptians and the Roman did, right? They just created or made up a new god that would be the god of both the Egyptians and the Romans, so as they could, quote unquote, have peace, right? I don't know how long that lasted, but for what it's worth, right? It happened, right? And of course, as usual, you can see the power play there, right? To rule, right? And who were these forces colliding with each other in this monotheistic at the rise, right? It was mostly god kings, right? It was mostly god kings, right? God kings. They fought it out. Some perished, some fell in line, right? It was a hostile takeover, so to speak, to create the new world order that we are seeing its claws out right now, right? And the pantheon, literally, these are the elite, right? These are the elite that they get to decide who lives and who dies. Why? Because of their status, right? It was like that back then, right? It was, or it is more like that now, right? Their accomplishments defined them, right? Their accomplishments defined them and equated to power, so to speak, right? But again, it's a world of illusions. So even that power that you think was garnered by hard work and attaining status and all that, it's a lie. Okay? It's a lie. Right? So if we look into Enoch, like you suggested to your viewers and your students over there to read the book of Enoch, if we go to the book of Enoch, we know how or what happened or what transpired, right? The fallen angels, after being contacted using spiritual means, gave inspiration, right, for the creation of weapons, and these are the things, or rather the mechanisms, that enable these people to take over and run over everything else, and only them to reign supreme, right? But for some time, right? Because all the power has to go back to the pantheon, and then, as usual, the Nephilim can't agree on anything. It's the rebellion is in their nature. So they would rebel even against their own unity. So the Pantheon would fight, creating a monotheistic movement. And after the said mono god that comes up, whoever woman she chooses, or he chooses rather, sorry, that then becomes the goddess, or rather the representation of goddess, right? Just like how they say God, the creator of the Bible, had a wife, right? Right? So again, it's a thing that has been happening over and over, right? And the movie Matrix does a good job of representing this Gnostic view, right? Because this is what it is. It's a Gnostic view. It's not a new movement, no. It is a very familiar and very old movement, but not new, right? Not new. And it's literally the covering of all of these three, right? We have the council that votes, right? That is the Pantheon, right? We have the goddess, right? The lady with the cookie, right? And we have the sex cult, right? The dancing, right? That erotic dancing in the Matrix movies, if you have watched all of them. It's basically a Gnostic movie, right? It's a Gnostic movie retelling something very ominous about what they are planning for the future, right? Because they intend, as usual, to keep the world distracted while they run their true operation, right? So the movie Matrix, if you watch and look between the lines, if that's the thing, right? It's a Gnostic movie, right? It's a Gnostic movie. And of course, the bald guy is the devil, right? The bald guy is the devil. He's trying to destroy the world. But again, he does, right? But the movie frames him as a hero, right? As a hero. But again, we have seen this over and over, right? So what is this about? Right? This is about purpose and about who you are, right? After you find out who you are, then your purpose is clearly, it defines itself, so to speak, right? You don't have to struggle to find said purpose, right? So the biggest war, right, in the Christian movies, movement, not movies, Christian movement, right, is and will always remain to be when a word is said in the scripture, is it literal or metaphorical, right? Is it literal or metaphorical, right? So that is mainly what divides these people, right? Because that then, like you said, defines their interpretation of what they are reading, right? Or what they are gaining from, say, scriptures, right? So the Garden of Eden, that was earth at peace without any interference, right? Let's say sanctioned right? Without any unsanctioned interference, right? Because there is such thing as sanctioned interference. But in this particular case, we are talking about unsanctioned interferences, right? So we need to be alert, right? We need to be alert, right? Because we know deep inside that all of these three movements are well and alive, and what's even scarier is that they are working together, right? And not that they organically evolved to work together, no, they were one thing from the beginning. So you can see how far then this deception goes back to, right? But if you focus on the Nephilim and what their intention is, then you can understand why they created goddess worship and the sex cult and all of that, to reproduce. The monotheistic to create empires, to rule. And the pantheon, those are the decision makers. There you have it. I'm just trying to paint a picture. But anyway, let me not go on for long. Let me put a pin on it right there. Prince Easy, love you, signing out. Bye.